Welcome to another episode of the Straight Up Chicago Investor Podcast. I'm 𝗤𝘃𝗀𝗀. With me, as always, is Mark 𝗬𝘁𝗍𝗁. Mark, how are we doing over there today?
Not bad. We had a change up in some of the people helping us with the podcast last week. Very grateful for that. I mean, that's our first change. I mean, we've had since we started. So very grateful to Tony Angelos, who's been with us for the first 106 episodes.
Yeah, Tony was from day one. I asked him, hey, should we start a podcast? So he was here from the ground floor, which was awesome. Obviously, life changes. In that time, he's gotten his license. He's a lot busier, so we wish him the best. And we'll be having 𝗤𝘃𝗏𝗏 jump on to handle the notes, who was just recently on with his house hacking story on the West Side. Yeah,
so very exciting. Very exciting that people want to hang out with us and help us promote all the messages we have out there to all the investors. So it's pretty cool. And Tony, thank you very much. We're very grateful to you. The listeners are grateful for. I get people always saying how great our show notes are. So, Alex, you got some shoes to fill.
Yeah. So all good stuff here. What do we got for a housing provider tip of the week?
Due diligence when you're buying these properties. I think one of the things that especially if you're buying in the suburbs, you have the right to get the Freedom of Information Act pulled from the individual city. So on all these different suburb websites, whether you're buying in Aurora or Country Club Hills or Berwyn, you could go on there and request a FOIA. And usually if you Google up FOIA in the city, it'll take you right to their website. You can pull a Freedom of Information Act and it'll give you information on that particular property. Usually asks you what type of information you want. And when you go to enter what you want, just say all and everything about this individual property for as long as you have it. And they'll send you information on if there was issues with a rental license, failed items. They'll tell you if there's 911 calls to the property. It'll tell you all this different information that could help you, especially if you're inheriting tenants. You can see if they've been a nuisance to the neighborhood. So very good information, and it's free. Ever since 9/11, you can pull these Freedom of Information. Now, it wasn't up until really the last 5-6 years where all the different villages have made it electronic. It used to be a pain where you have to kind of fill it out, fax it in, and then wait 5-7 days to get a fax back. Or even some of the cities up until a handful of years ago made you come pick it up, which made it kind of discouraging to get it. But make sure you're doing that as part of your due diligence. It's very valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's dive in. We got a lot to do here.
And we got a very interesting show today. It's just very different than what we typically have. Today we have the executive director for 20 years of the WRO, World Relief Organization. And we have with her as well today, we have the director of development who's been with the WRO for the last 2 years, but it's been in the not-for-profit space for 15 years. So today I want to welcome Susan 𝗵𝗃, executive director, and Nathan White, director of development, both from WRO, World Relief Organization. So welcome, guys. It was kind of a brief intro. So if there's anything else you want to throw in there, we'd love to hear it.
Sure. Thank you so much, Mark, for having us. And we're just delighted to be here. And yes, I've been with World Relief in the Chicagoland area for 20 years, and that has been truly a joy. And I've actually grown quite a passion for housing as a result of my time at World Relief. So it's a delight to be here with you, Nathan.
Yeah, and I just want to say thanks again for having us. It's a joy to be here. Even though I'm relatively new to Chicago, I've fallen in love with the city. There's such amazing spaces here. So I'm excited to be here today.
It's all good. There's room for transplants. So it's all good.
Good to know.
Let's share the, Tom, you might not know the story, but let's share this with the audience, kind of how we end up on this call. I have a family friend, I guess we manage one of their properties as well too, in Schaumburg, and they called up and they said they're turning their I think the house where the priest lives next to the church, parsonage or whatever you call it. They're turning it. It has been unused since their previous pastor passed away many years ago, and they're going to turn it into a home for refugee families for Afghan families as a stopover before they find permanent residency. And I took interest in that. She said, "Mark, do you have a carpet guy?" And we sent our carpet guy over. The carpet guy did I think the bedrooms in the hallway. And I said, who's heading this up? I actually went to her with the idea. I said, where are you getting these tenants? Maybe there's more we could do. There's a lot of vacancies out there that maybe we could help. And that's where she introduced me, 𝗤𝘃𝗏𝗏𝗏. I'll call her out personally. She introduced me to you, Nathan, and that's kind of how we jumped on a call. And you told me more about your guys' organization. And since I've started talking to the person that's in your guys' that heads up the actual housing leasing piece of it. And that was a good conversation. But what I took from all of this is there's, just a bigger, something bigger that me and Tom could be doing for all you listeners out there, or maybe there's something we could be introducing to, or some way we could help WRO combine with all the landlords out there. And maybe there's something that we can take what you guys might struggle with or might make it easier, I guess. So that's kind of how we ended up here today, which is a pretty interesting story.
Yeah. Small world situation, I think, right?
Yeah, for sure. So
lots of good connections. Before
we kind of going further, I kind of hinted to some of it, but WRO, kind of give us who you are, what your guys' mission is, how long you've been around, what, like, more specific to Chicago. You guys are outside of Chicago too, I believe. So I guess what you are to Chicago, I guess, is the best part you could do.
Yeah, we are an organization that's a nonprofit serving around the globe, actually. But here in Chicagoland, we help immigrants integrate into their local communities. We're a faith-based organization, so we often partner with local churches and also partner much more broadly with the entire community to help create a whole community of welcome for immigrants, including refugees, when they arrive to the country. And are you all familiar with who refugees are?
No, break it down, please. Give us 101.
Yeah. So refugees are people who flee persecution in their home countries because of maybe their religion, their race, or their political opinion. And they, after fleeing, very often refugees stay in limbo for many, many years. And the U.S. government has a program through which they welcome a specific number of refugees to the U.S. each year. And it's organizations like World Relief that are here on the other side. So after refugees have gone through a very long process of interviews, of security screenings, of health screenings, of orientation, they arrive to the United States. And we're here, World Relief is here to welcome them. We're one of 6 organizations like ours who do refugee resettlement work in the Chicagoland area. And believe it or not, Illinois has welcomed over 130,000 refugees since the mid-1970s, when refugee resettlement really began in the country. So that number just always staggers me, because I think about all of the impact that those people and families have had over the decades in our state.
Got it. So that's amazing. I would have missed that number by a 0 or 2. That's a big number.
Right? Yeah.
So Susan, can you let's talk tactical for a second. Refugee comes in. What is the service that you are providing? You are looking for housing for them? You're looking to get them accommodated to the neighborhood? Like, can you provide just some details on, I don't want to say day to day, but what are some of those value adds that you are providing?
Yeah, so when refugees arrive, they frequently arrive not knowing anyone, or maybe with a relative or friend locally. And think about if you're new to a new country and you arrive with a suitcase, sometimes the clothes on your back. It's everything that World Relief helps mobilize. So we meet people at the airport and then transport them to a home that World Relief has helped to secure for the family. And then that home is furnished through donations from local churches, local community organizations, volunteers. And from there, people need the documentation in order to get a job. So applying for a Social Security card, getting their employment authorization document, signing their kids up for school, doing those first school tours, getting to know the community. So where's the grocery store? And think about not just where's the grocery store, but what are some of the nuances of shopping in the US? Like, what are the little bags in the produce aisle? What do you do with those? And think about the cereal aisle. Oh my goodness, all the choices. So there's those aspects. And then we work very hard with families to help them secure their first job. So for adults who are of employment age, ideally, they want to get back into a career field that's similar to what they had in their home country. But often in the US, the first job is just getting any first job that that you can get in being able to build a U.S. work history here.
That number is astonishing. How many refugees have came here over that period of time? That could have been a Chicago fact, Tom. But up until recently, we had the Afghan influx, I guess, right? And if I'm saying that wrong, I said Afghan. I just want to make sure I said it the right way. But what other big surges have there been over the last couple of decades that you kind of share with us, or kind of some history on what you guys have done in the Chicago area?
Well, Mark, I might jump in real quick. One of the things regarding the surge we're having with Afghans right now is that I would say we are still in the middle of it. It's maybe not in the news as much anymore, but at World Relief Chicagoland, we've welcomed about 150, I think, Afghans to date, and we're expecting another 125 more that will be resettling. So just on that front, there's still quite a number of people arriving, and then we'll have lots of other refugees coming in beyond that. But Susan might be able to speak a little bit better to the long-term context of group arrivals or large influxes that we've seen over the years.
Yeah, early in the 1970s and 80s, many refugees from the from the Vietnam War were coming. So specifically, the Hmong people arrived, and then from there, Illinois has resettled many people from Somalia, from Ethiopia, from Eritrea, from former Yugoslavia, from former Soviet Union. So when you think about big world-shaping events that have happened and major wars, very often in the years following that, we will welcome people from that crisis, especially if it hasn't resolved quickly. We continue right now to resettle not just people from Afghanistan, but also from Iraq, from Syria, again from countries in the former Soviet Union. We resettle folks have welcomed some folks from Venezuela, and could go on and on. But truly, it is a global program. But right now, we are resettling many people from Afghanistan, and that's the church that you mentioned, Mark, that you've got involved in. They're an example of so many groups throughout our communities who have been just incredibly generous with Afghan refugees as they're arriving. Illinois is expecting to welcome 1,600 Afghan refugees in the matter of a few months, and I believe as of today, right around half of that number have already arrived to the state of Illinois, and we're waiting to welcome others who are coming from U.S. military bases around the country where they've been staying for a couple of months. And they are in need of a place of safety, a place to rebuild their lives, and in need very specifically of housing.
Just some kind of background, like why Chicago, or how, I guess over the years, how do people get routed to Chicago? They want to make sure they suffer through that first winter, or like what, why here? Why not Tampa? Why does Chicago, or is it spread out evenly? And that's the breakdown.
Yeah, that is a great question. Yes. So refugee resettlement does take place across the country. 49 out of 50 states resettle refugees, including Alaska and Hawaii. And so Illinois, though, has been known since the beginning as a very welcoming state, and specifically the city of Chicago, incredibly welcoming. The majority of refugees who resettled in Illinois have arrived through Chicago and the surrounding suburbs. And there's many reasons for that. We have a deep history of immigration and immigrants in the city of Chicago, strong history of welcome. And we just see that evidenced in so many ways as people welcome refugees and other immigrants.
And Mark, I might jump in actually. One of the really neat benefits that I think we see even within our country, right, of being people who welcome immigrants is the impact it has on forward moving an economy. Like, I don't know the specific percentage right now, but there's evidence out there of refugees being significantly more likely to start a business, to become an entrepreneur. And in fact, 40% of Fortune 500 companies were started by immigrants or their children. So when you think about like strategic people to come alongside of that are going to have a pretty good impact on creating a space where everyone can thrive. I think this is a really, really key place to be investing time and resources.
That's a great stat. 40%. Like that is, and they're what percent of the population? Like a much lesser number, correct? Like that is,
right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That is a tremendous stat. So a lot of our listeners, almost all of our listeners, invest in real estate. They own, they own a three flat. They own a 3-flat. They own a 10 unit. Mark, we got to come up with some sort of term for 3 now. We got to use that in some way. But what could we do, or why should we care besides the general humanity, right? There's a good cause. We understand that. But as housing providers, how can we take this a step further? What are some things that maybe we can do that would be of assistance to your organization?
Tom, I love that question. We first were introduced because, Mark, the work that you're doing with the church who's providing temporary housing, and they're providing that because we're having a really hard time finding permanent housing for refugee families. And I think the whole backdrop right now is that there's not enough housing in housing that's affordable, housing that's available, particularly as we continue to wade through or emerge from the pandemic. So just one way people can get involved and help is consider whether you might be willing to rent your unit or rent apartments to refugees. That first home is so important, so vital. It sets up not just the home where you live, but where you go to school, and builds connections to communities. And so that's a terrific way to really invest in a family's life right out of the gate.
So that sounds too easy, right? And I think I might ask you this. I think I asked you this question, Nathan, when we talked. But it's like, why wouldn't landlords that have vacancies come running your way, or what's the risk, I guess? And I think when I talked to your leasing person, said that the success rate is like next to nothing for you guys as far as getting people through the first year and so forth. So why are landlords not beating down your door to say, hey, I have vacancy, fill your space?
Yeah, I can start us out, and then Susan, I think, can add more context to it. But one of the things that we're facing is when refugees come, they don't necessarily have a credit history, and for some landlords that is a deal breaker, right? And World Relief exists. We have as an organization to walk with these families to help them learn how to pay your rent on time, communicate well with your landlord, that kind of stuff. It's kind of case management support that we provide along that. But still not having that credit history, or not necessarily having that job, or a language barrier. Sometimes those can be hindrances that we're seeing out the gate. And one of the other things we're facing is, unfortunately, during the previous administration, there was a significant drop in refugee arrival numbers. And part of that is existing landscape of relationships that World Relief had with property management companies or with landlords. Those just kind of fell apart over time or went away because there were less and less people arriving, and a lot of places changed hands right over the years. So sometimes what we need is a space like this to be able to connect and get to know other people, for other people get to know us, to know our commitment to walking alongside of families. But the lack of those longstanding relationships, I think, is also having a little bit of an impact on the situation we're facing right now. So, Susan, is there more that you want to add to that?
Yeah, when we think about everything we usually ask on rental applications, and kind of the traditional leasing arrangement that we make, there's some key areas that refugees don't fit with what we need and expect as landlords. My husband and I own a 3-flat, and I know what we look for. We want people who have secured income, who have a good rental history, who we know are going to pay the rent and keep the property well. And when refugees arrive, they're arriving, they don't have a job yet secured. They don't have an income. They don't have U.S. credit history, as Nathan shared. And they have what they have is an organization that's going to help them get on their feet. But it is very understandably a jump for people to make to rent to refugees. And the faith and the trust is really placed in the organization to do what we say, that we're going to help this family find a job, be able to pay their rent by a specific period of time. For us at World Relief, I believe our average right now is most refugees find a job by their 58th day in the country on average right now. And our goal is that they're able to take over their rent payments by that 4th month in the country. We cover those first 3 months, and then they pick it up, and we're walking with them through that first year. So if there's any issues, that we're able to help them get the assistance and support that they need. But that takes some trust. And I think about that for my own situation. I'd need to trust an organization quite a bit to be able to take that leap.
So a housing provider is throwing their screening criteria out the window.
Yeah.
And taking
that's a big ask, right?
Yeah, no. So you're going against everything that you built around that policy and you believe and you preach about, and then you're taking that chance that working with someone like you guys, WR, can help get these people on the feet and get them moving forward. And the payment wise, that's not, you guys aren't subsidizing that. I think you guys help with the first few months, and that's why your guys' goal is to get them working so they can take over. How does that work, I guess?
Yeah, that's a great question. So typically we assist for the first 3 months that someone is in the country. Sometimes a little bit longer, depending on different programs refugees might be enrolled in. And it is during that time that we're helping them secure rent that would enable that, or secure a job that would enable them to pay rent. Very often those are jobs in the past that would pay minimum wage. Now, thankfully, it's much higher. The average wage, I believe, last year, the average wage for refugees we helped secure a job for in the state was well over $15, almost $16 an hour, which is fantastic. So we are we're supporting them during that period of time, and then sometimes people run into issues or have reduced hours and so forth. And when that happens, we help them secure rental assistance either through World Relief or through another organization, because again, it's maintaining stable housing is critically important. And we want to keep that relationship with the landlord, right? And the landlord's not going to want to rent any other units to a client through World Relief if that first experience isn't good. So we have a very vested interest in making sure that is paid.
Got it. Susan, is there any specific type of housing or location that you're looking at? Or is it more of, hey, let's find something that's within this dollar range anywhere in the Chicagoland area that would work for our people?
Yeah, that is I appreciate the question, because at World Relief, we don't resettle people everywhere throughout the Chicagoland area because we've learned that community is important and being near other refugees is important. So right now, the north side of Chicago and some of the north suburbs, such as 𝗬𝗃𝗃, are areas that we're looking. DuPage County are areas we're looking specifically West Chicago, Carroll-Stream, Glendale Heights, Wheaton, Glen Ellen, and then Aurora and communities near the city of Aurora are areas we're looking. There's other organizations in Chicago I mentioned earlier who do similar work, and so very often there's resettlement work that's happening all throughout the Chicagoland area, but this is specific to World Relief.
Awesome. That's a big map.
Yes, it is.
So do you guys have, and sorry to put you on the spot, but do you have any sort of, the success story of, hey, we've been doing this for X years and 90-something% of this works out? Obviously, it's never going to be perfect, but do you have any of those numbers or any of those metrics that you can share?
Yeah. I mentioned earlier the importance of people getting a job early. And I would say that usually it's about 95% of people who are seeking a job when they arrive who find employment by the end of their 90th day in the country, which is, again, thinking about someone who may not speak English, who's brand new to a new country, a new community, being able to work and have a steady stream of income.
So you get 19 out of 20 of those, 19 out of 20 refugees a job in the first quarter of being in a new territory, not knowing the language.
Yeah.
That's pretty phenomenal, right? It is.
No.
I would have undershot that number tremendously.
I was trying to think of something funny to even say on that. Like, that's so like amazing. Like,
which is, it's such a testimony to just the hard work and the tenacity and endurance of the people that we serve. That's, I mean, World Relief, we do our part, but really that all the credit goes to refugees who are getting on their feet so quickly. It's incredible.
I mean, I'll just add to that. Time to time again, we hear stories of people who they just really, really want to work. Like an example of a guy who was a lawyer who is taking a job as custodian because he wants to work. He just needs to be doing something, right? Like, this is true. I think regularly, I was talking with Peter, who directs our immigrant family services in the Chicago location. He's saying regularly we'll have people who age-wise wouldn't need to work anymore, but they want to get a job. They want to work. They want to generate income, but they also want to be a part of giving back to the community as a whole. And I think that's a really cool, inspirational thing to even take like a learner's posture on. Like, people who have lost so much and are coming to the US, they still want to give back. They still want to be a part of making this community a better place. And I just think, like, for me, that's like a really neat little nugget to just point out. It's less on the stat side, Tom, but it's a little bit more on the human component.
No, that's great. Just unbelievable.
What about, so we said they don't speak the language. Is that kind of something you guys help facilitate with them in classes, ESL classes and so forth? Is that part of kind of your mission to help them get, because I imagine they have to know some English after a couple months just for so many different reasons, but is that something you guys do too?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Nathan.
Yeah. Education, like English as a second language, those are core parts of the work that we do at World Relief. And there's lots of really neat volunteer opportunities. We engage people in classroom settings. We engage them in individual settings. We actually do ones to help people with interviews or help people with a variety of whatever challenges kind of come up. One we have is career pathways, where we're giving people specific training to help get the language they need to advance in a career here in the US. Frankly, I had another thought, but it just totally evaded my brain.
Well, I know we're on the housing piece here, but I think maybe for the show notes of the show, you guys should also include links to, if there's people listening that have, you have a lot of local entrepreneurs here too, that have positions or have roles that people could fill. There might be an avenue with our audience with that side of things too. So we should make sure we have something for that.
Mm-hmm. One thing I might add real quick to that, Mark, is we also have a network of interpreters, people who, I think it's well above 60, it might be close to 100 at this point, different interpreters that we can contact to help people. So some people are starting at ground zero, but are super dedicated. A quick story I'll add in is this is from a family that arrived about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago from Afghanistan. They had a daughter who we believe was about 8 years old when she arrived, very little English, right? Didn't really know much at all, but got into school through World Relief, got connected to a tutor to help her with her English and help her with her homework. And over the next 4 years, progressed at such a fast rate that she's now enrolled at one of the most prestigious college prep schools in the country. And for me, that's just like a cool example of the journey that we get to be a part of when we make space and we create opportunities for these families to thrive. So yeah.
That's awesome. You got that huge smile. For the listeners, he's got a huge smile on his face. You should have a huge smile. That's awesome.
Yeah. Go ahead, Susan.
Oh yeah. Mark, you asked earlier what can housing providers do to help, and I wanted to say a little bit of what World Relief does, because as I talked about what providers of housing can do, I think it's easy to come across that maybe most of the risk is on the landlord or the housing provider. And yet at World Relief, we also want to, we come alongside landlords and come alongside families. And there is so much change and cultural adjustment that a refugee family is going through, and we provide cultural orientation. We want to help deal with challenges that arise, which they do with any tenant. Hopefully not every tenant, but many tenants, there's challenges, miscommunication, needing to clarify rules, and we want to come alongside and assist with the process so that refugees understand what their responsibilities are, what they need to do as part of that lease agreement that they've signed.
When I spoke with Robin, she told me one of the extreme examples of what you're just saying was, there's certain cultures that you have to, when they come to the United States, you have to educate them. They can't hang their meat outside. And she's like, I've had to tell them that if you hang your meat outside, this is an extreme example that she used, but I thought it was pretty funny to kind of put in perspective for what you guys, people, that's something me and Tom know not to put not to put our meat anywhere but the freezer or the fridge.
Right. Yeah.
And that's not the norm. And that's some of the challenges you guys are up against. Some of those very cultures are just so different sometimes that she used that as an example. I thought I just want to share that.
Yeah. That is a great, definitely extreme example, but a good example of some of those differences in expectation and things like food storage or laundry, or what it looks like to live in community and neighbor. That we want, people want to learn the culture that they're in and to understand. And you don't know unless you're taught. And sometimes you don't know until you make a mistake. And then we want to come alongside families and help them understand what the norms are here.
That's awesome. So, I mentioned probably all of our listeners are housing providers, but a lot of them also have day jobs, right? We have a lot of people on this show that can probably help in other ways as well. They may speak a second language. They may be handy. They may be able to provide legal advice, education, tutoring, whatever it may be. So just throwing that out there, what are other ways that folks listening to this can learn more about the organization and look to jump in, whether it be with time, talent, treasure, et cetera?
Yeah, I'm glad to jump in on that. We have a lot of different ways that we want the community to engage. In fact, part of our mission, right, is to engage the local community and often churches. But I think if you're looking at people who are business owners, we are looking for companies that will partner with us deliberately to hire and give employment and give advancement opportunities. If you're looking at people who are looking for a way to give back with their skills, a lot of volunteer opportunities come up and are available in those regards. And then I think, in terms of treasure, one of those components is we do receive donations, financial donations that go towards helping ensure that the full supports are there for a family that's brand new to the U.S., just finding that initial stability. And those donations help ensure that is there and that will walk with a family all the way through until they find a place of belonging here in the United States. So time, talent, and treasure are the way that you talked about it, Tom. One of the things that we've said is we invite people to help us fill the gaps. And that's through giving, through advocating. As a faith-based organization, we invite people to be praying and then also serving. So giving, advocating, praying, and serving are the way that we talk about that. If I can spend just a quick moment on advocating, actually love the example of what you guys are doing here, having us on the podcast as a way to help get the word out, spread the information to other people about the need, about the opportunity, about a vision for the future of what it looks like to have a welcoming and just community together. But we also do advocacy work in the in government circles. So people who work in those spaces, connecting with World Relief is a great way to learn how to do that and be a part of the initiatives that are there.
That's great. I have two quick questions and then we'll wrap. One, housing size. For anyone listening at this point, they're like, I'm interested. I mean, do you guys only take 1-bedroom apartments, landlords? Do you guys take single family homes? Like what is your guys, what is the need out there for you guys?
It's typically 1, 2, or 3-bedroom homes, apartments. Occasionally we have a need for 4 bedrooms. And usually we're looking for apartments. On occasion, we'll look at homes. There tends to be a little bit more on the orientation side with homes. And so that's one reason why we focus on apartments. And one bathroom, 2 bathrooms, any of those will work.
Gotcha. One last question, because it's important here in Illinois. Is this funded through federal or state?
This is a federally funded program.
All right. I figured that. I just want to put it out there just in case.
Yeah, good.
All right, cool. Tom, you ready to wrap?
Do it.
All right, guys. We got 6 questions to power through here. So WR, what has been your guys' competitive advantage? You said there's some other like organizations out there helping refugees. What's been your competitive advantage to really maximize what you do for the refugees that come through your guys' system?
Oh, I love that question. And without knowing the inside of all others, or one of the things at World Relief that we love is how much we engage local communities, particularly local volunteers, in the process and the work that we do. There are other organizations that do some of that, but I think that's one very unique part that is central to World Relief's model of resettlement.
I also want to just point out our 40+ year history of doing this in Chicagoland. I think there's a lot that we've learned, and that history is rich and deep. And having our ED having been on staff for 20+ years is a win too.
That is huge.
All right. What is one piece of advice you would tell someone that is yet to work with WRO, but is interested in housing from the housing provider perspective?
I would say to be patient and communicative in the process, and know that there is tremendous satisfaction and joy through getting involved, and even in the moments where things don't go according to plan.
I like it.
I think most landlords are used to that across the board. All right. This goes to both of you guys. What do you do for fun? It's an easy one. It's softball there.
For me, Chicago isn't conducive to this, but I love stand-up paddleboarding. Summer months is great, but for the other 9 months of the year, it's a little challenging.
I love exploring the city. You know, part of being here in Chicago with my wife and 3 kids is adventuring when we can. So we like to get on the L train and just go somewhere new and learn some new things about the city. So that's our go-to right now.
Perfect.
Oh, that's great. And you can do it for another 20 years too.
Right.
So, all right. What is a good book, podcast, or self-development activity that you'd recommend to our listeners?
One of my favorites is a podcast specifically directed toward women in leadership called the Lead Stories podcast. It's fantastic. Leadership tips and insight.
All right. Nathan, jump in.
I think one of the best self-development things that you can have is balancing both space to reflect and check in with yourself and having a mentor in your life who can speak into what they're seeing in you. So I think those are two things that have been incredibly fruitful for me.
That's good. I like it. Besides yourself, name one person in your local network that you'd highly recommend to our listeners.
I recommend the Neighbor Project, which is an organization in Aurora who helps people save toward home ownership and then purchase their first home through a really innovative housing model.
All right. We'll make sure to link to that in the show notes.
So Susan literally stole the one that I was going to say.
It must be a good one then. So that's perfect.
Great organization, great people. So we're just going to give them a double.
There you go. Well, thank you guys so much. You have provided a ton of value to our listeners. How can they learn more about World Relief Organization? And is there any way they can provide value to you?
Yeah, I think one of the quickest ways to learn is by visiting our website, which is worldrelief.org/Chicagoland. And that's a great way to just connect, get a sense of who we are. But if you have specific questions around housing or opportunities, you can email chicagolandhousing@wr.org. And that'll go directly to the people that are most connected with on the ground needs. And we'll be able to get some more information to you. So those are two quick ways. You can always reach out to myself. My email is nwhite@wr.org. We keep it simple so I can remember it. But would love to connect and have some conversations.
All right. And for those of you driving, don't try to write that down. We will link to them in the show notes. When you're settled, go ahead and look those up. Okay. So it's getting cold. This thing is going to air in January. January is Chicago's coldest month. So Mark, I'll give you multiple choice here. In what year did Chicago log its warmest January? And your options are 1880, 1933, 1975, 2012. 1880, 1933, 1975, 2012.
75.
All right. Nathan, Susan, you want to throw a guess in there?
I'm going to go with 1883.
I'm going to say 2012.
It was the 1880.
Oh.
I don't know if it was the warmest. They might just not have had a more accurate measurement back then.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. I was off again on that one. All right. Awesome, man. What a great show. Nathan, Susan, thank you very much for coming out here today. Hopefully the listeners will take advantage of your great word and get interested and get involved. So that's the whole goal of the show here. So Tom, thank you as always as well too. Listeners, if you like what you heard today, please leave us a review. But also, if you have any questions about WRO and you want to not reach out directly, feel free to reach out to me as well too. And I will give you information and my thoughts and my dealings with them so far. And then, but otherwise, please reach out to them. If you know someone that could be potentially benefit WRO as well too, please connect them or connect me with them and I will make the connection. So again, Nathan, Susan, thank you very much. Tom, thank you as always. And listeners, we'll see you next week.
Thanks all.
Thanks.
Thank you.